Mr. Winston Churchill, making a political address in England in which a public address system and radio broadcasting are being used to spread his voice over great distances. Political addresses are much the same the world over, and the microphone and loudspeaker are now accepted as a necessary adjunct. Mr. Churchill is Chancellor of the Exchequer in the present English cabinet. Radio performers in person at a children's hospital. The Radio Franks, who are well known to radio listeners, went to perform in person for these crippled children, who before had only known them as voices over the air. The largest German radio studio at Nauen, near Berlin. Ideal placing for the microphone. Few broadcasters are able to arrange as favorable a placing of the microphone as was arranged for this speech of President Coolidge. Where the microphone is so favorably placed, excellent speech quality results. The first radio inauguration. President Calvin Coolidge taking the oath of office from Chief Justice William Howard Taft of the United States Supreme Court. March 4th, 1925 was the first time in American history that an ex-president administered the oath of office to an incoming president. The 24 stations which broadcast the ceremonies practically linked up the entire nation. The Oriole Orchestra of Chicago, frequently heard through station WEBH. C.H. Murchland, telegraph operator for the United Press at the Dayton, Ohio Herald, receiving press dispatches by radio broadcasting during a recent storm which struck down press wires. Broadcasting has frequently come to the aid of newspapers in an emergency caused by a storm since it was first used in this connection by the Detroit News in 1921. Broadcasting the making of a motion picture in a New York studio. Vincent Lopez is at the left with the baton, and Ann Pennington is dancing atop the piano. The dance music is used in the scenario, and it was broadcast by WJZ. The announcer made appropriate explanations while the action for the camera was going on. A standard receiver of a popular type. The batteries, antenna, etc. are all contained in the cabinet. In order for set manufacturers and battery manufacturers to supply parts which will fit into any receiver of similar type, standardization of supplies is essential. The final luxury. Passengers on express transcontinental trains can now listen to broadcasting as they while away the hours. The photograph shows passengers on a Canadian National Railways train, and the antenna which brings them their broadcast programs. An entire chain of broadcasting stations has lately been set up in Canada by the Canadian National Railways. Engaging a hotel room and radio is now possible at the Drake Hotel in Chicago, the Roosevelt in New York, and the Benjamin Franklin in Philadelphia. A portable set is installed in the room of the guest ordering it. Having an individual receiver allows the guest to select his own radio entertainment. In some large apartment houses, hotels, and hospitals, a central receiver has been installed, and the output is then wired to the various rooms. The disadvantage is that but one program can be heard at a time, and little or no selection is offered the guest. The principles in a bit of historic broadcasting. This photograph was taken in the studio of WEAF New York on the evening of January 1st, when two recording artists of the Victor Talking Machine Company broadcast through a chain of 8 stations. The Victor Company, through its New Year's night broadcasting, is the latest of the large phonograph companies to allow its stars to broadcast. Several weeks before, the Brunswick Company allowed a number of its recording artists, members of the Metropolitan Opera Company, to broadcast. Calvin Childs of the Victor Company, Lucrezia Borri of the Metropolitan Opera Company, Gwendolyn McCormick, daughter of John McCormick, and John McCormick are in the photograph. Lucrezia Borri and John McCormick, recording artists of the Victor Talking Machine Company, who broadcast through a chain of 8 stations on New Year's night. Miss Borri is a member of the Metropolitan Opera Company, and Mr. McCormick is the famous concert singer. The phonograph company announced that its entry into the broadcasting field was purely an experiment, and if successful, would be continued for its advertising value. The studio of KOA at Denver. A group of artists broadcasting from the main studio of the news station of the General Electric Company, KOA, at Denver. A pity the performers couldn't be seen as well as heard. Broadcasting studio of the Brooklyn Daily Eagle, which is operated in connection with station WAHG at Richmond Hill, New York City. H.V. Kaltenborn, associate editor of the Eagle, is here seen before the microphone about to broadcast one of his noted Current Topics talks, formerly one of the biggest features at WEAF, and now a regular feature of the Eagle programs. Also in the picture are George Curry, chief announcer at the studio, at the left, and at the right, Elmer M. Applegate, radio editor of the Eagle. Miss Mary Howard, soprano of San Antonio, Texas, who is in New York studying singing, is here seen broadcasting the song Texas through station WEAF in honor of Ma Ferguson's inauguration that was then taking place. Special amplifiers made it possible for the audience at Austin to hear the song clearly. Marcel Dupré, the great French organist who has been broadcasting from WJY and several connecting stations. He is here seen at the Wanamaker Concert Organ in New York, where he played all his programs. In the Radio Broadcast Lab. The Radio Corporation 20-watt tube transmitter, whose plate supply is furnished by a 350-volt bank of Prestolite Storage B batteries. Red Christensen, the sea-going taxi driver of New York, whose adventures in the Lost Islands of the Pacific were seized upon as material for one presentation of a new type of radio program. Excellent classical music is given during the Eveready Hour by the Mixed Quartet, which consists of Wilfred Glenn, left, baritone, Rose Bryant, contralto, Beulah Young, soprano, Charles Harrison, tenor, and Tom Grissel. During the specially arranged hour of entertainment, given each week by this organization, each is a complete entity. The program by this group and others of the organization is part of a completely balanced program, which has been well received by the listeners. Dispatching harbor tugs by radio is being tried by the New York Central Railroad in New York Harbor. The company anticipates saving much time by being in constant touch with the captain of each tug. Sweden's new radio transmitter at Grimeton, near Gothenburg. The 400-foot towers extend in a line for 1.5 miles. This station is one of those in constant communication with Radio Central at Rocky Point, Long Island. All these stations use high power and a wavelength of approximately 17,500 meters, about 10 miles long. A new Chicago broadcaster, station WBCN, operated by the Southtown Economist. The owners of this station plan to attempt toll broadcasting, such as is done by WEAF and other stations. How radio resistances are wound. This precision machine, which was in operation at the recent Chicago radio show, made strips of resistance varying from 3 to 700 ohms. Like other components in radio receivers, most resistances are wound by machinery, very accurately and quickly. receiving transatlantic commercial radio traffic in the station at Nauen, near Berlin, Germany. Nauen, POZ, is the single most powerful station in that country, and transmits commercial traffic directly to many countries. The handle of a large receiving loop is in the upper left corner. The towers of WBZ at Springfield, Massachusetts. This is one of the stations heard abroad during the recent Radio Broadcast International tests. Repairing a broadcast station antenna. New lead-in wires are being put in place at WJZ-WJY, New York. The rigger is suspended by a cable midway between the two masts which rise 100 feet above the 20-story building on which they are installed. The square house between the towers is the apparatus room for the twin stations, the control room and studio being on the 6th floor. The radio room of Marconi's yacht, the Elettra. Equipment of almost every sort is here, including receiving apparatus for very long and very short waves. Signor Marconi has lately been conducting experiments with short waves, and found that on those from 100 to 32 meters, the daylight absorption decreased rapidly with the shorter waves. It was also found that reflectors at the transmitting station, using very short waves, increased the strength of the received signal and diminished fading. Recording radio signals during the total eclipse of the sun in the Radio Broadcast Laboratory at Garden City. Signals were received from WGY, WBZ, and other stations. The photograph shows John B. Brennan, right, and Keith Henney, left, both of the laboratory staff, with one of the receivers used in the measurements. The dictaphone at Mr. Henney's left was connected to a loudspeaker unit attached to the receiver, and continuous records made of the signals of various broadcasters before, after, and during the eclipse. Rapid-fire radio. Transatlantic radio messages being received in Germany, direct from Rocky Point, Long Island. The automatic machines in the photograph receive the dots and dashes at high speed and print them on the paper tape from which they are later decoded by operators. What a 5,000-watt broadcasting station looks like from the unromantic side. The operator is shown behind the apparatus panel of the new WLW station at Harrison, Ohio, about 25 miles from Cincinnati, where the studio is located. Operators in the Cincinnati studio control the station, which is located far outside the city limits, so that the powerful waves of the station will not mar the reception of the local enthusiasts. Radio in a Virginia cave. Endless caverns at Newmarket, Virginia. Experiments with radio reception have been tried in many unusual locations, from coal mines to bank vaults. But it is doubtful if any radio equipment has been located in more picturesque surroundings. Roy A. Wiegand, chief engineer of the DeForest Radio Company, at work on a receiver circuit in his laboratory. The writing on the wall during the presentation of a radio play in an English broadcasting studio. The typewritten pages of the manuscript were projected on a screen on the studio wall where all could see it. The microphone, English style, is enclosed in the rectangular box in the center. Aboard the SS George Washington, Captain Cunningham has a broadcast receiver which he uses in the time he can spare from his nautical duties. Laying a Rogers underground antenna at Hyattsville, Maryland. Dr. J. Harris Rogers is nearest the camera. The Rogers system has been developing experimentally for some time, and has been watched by officials of the War and Navy departments.